Hello, and welcome back to the Church Tech Probs podcast. This is episode 3. I'm Jason Chisholm, and I'm here with Rick Fair. And today we're going to be giving an intro to live streaming on a budget.
Yeah, big topic since the pandemic, and it's something that I think all churches are kind of cognizant of right now. And everybody's doing this to varying degrees. And I think really the best way for us to start talking about this is kind of talk about our pandemic experience and where we started. Because
Yeah,
we
we
were
were kind of,
starting with nothing.
yeah, for sure. We were definitely forced into recording, and we actually started pre-recording before we started live streaming. It was just easier for us to record and pre-record the service, edit it, and then post it.
Yeah, you guys were not actually streaming, posting, or really engaging much on social media prior to the pandemic at all.
That's correct. It really forced us to do that, and now
Yeah.
we've been online ever since.
Yeah, so we've been online. I actually look back because I have saved every one of these. I have show my OCD nature, the way I do things. I have a lot of these little drives like this. I'm ashamed to admit I probably have about 30 of these lying around. But these are
For those that are,
Yeah, go ahead.
for those people that aren't watching on YouTube, why don't you explain what the drive is that you have?
So I have a lot of portable SSD drives. I use all Mac. I've been all Mac for 20 years now. I mean, pretty much as long as we've known each other, I've always been on the Mac.
He converted me over to Mac as well. So.
Yeah, took a while. I got you there, but
it did. Now all of our staff at church is on Mac as well, except for the pastor.
Yeah, I convert everybody over to Mac. I'm a believer. I'm a true believer in Mac. But I have since USB-C has become popular, and I think that was around 2018, 2019. I have been buying up a bunch of these little SSD drives, the portable SSDs. Every time Best Buy has a sale on them, I will pick up a 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte drive. I have, this is awful, various different versions of these. I have the Western Digital versions. I have the Samsung T versions, and then the cheapest ones I've came up with, but they are stable, are these right here, these little SanDisks.
Yeah,
they're great. I've been storing all of our stuff on cloud backup and secondary backup since we started doing this back in 2020. So we have a full historical catalog of everything we've done since we started live streaming. And I'm a historian too. I have a degree in history. I have a master's degree in history. I study history, and I think this is important information. I mean, we don't think about now in the present, but later on, somebody who wants to see the history of the church, 50 years from now, we have a wealth of information to share with them. And that's why I do this. But I keep backups like this in addition to cloud storage. And let me say, cloud storage, when you're recording at high-end 1080, which is what we're doing, is not cheap.
No.
I'm fortunate that with my law firm I run, I have a lot of storage that I just have for my own personal use. And I store everything on that. That I think is one of the first questions that you have to consider when you're getting into live streaming is, are you going to keep archives?
Right.
Because you might start like we did. We started with an iPad.
Literally. I mean, we had nothing. We didn't have any cameras. The church had a little portable camera that was terrible, and it was like a Panasonic or something that they were using to shoot videos, but would not work for the purpose of what we needed. And it just was terrible. And so the church purchased an iPad Pro for me to use. And so we just started recording into iMovie. We'd record the video, and then we'd use iMovie to edit it. And then we'd do all the overlays with the lyrics and everything. And then we'd post it. We'd record it like Thursday and then have it edited, and it would go up Sunday morning as like a premiere on Facebook.
Yeah, I remember starting in April, when all the shutdowns happened in 2020. That was the plan, and you guys kept that going till I believe September.
Yeah, and then the pastor decided we needed to record it live, and we just in-house one take, and
Hmm.
we would start live streaming.
Yeah, and there were a lot of videos during the week. You did one where you just played music during the week.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, we had this thing called Worship on the
yeah.
Couch, and so our associate pastor and myself would record basically kind of a weekly Bible study. I would sing a couple songs, and he would do a little Bible study devotional time. And we called it Worship on the Couch because we were literally sitting on a couch when we did it. We found a cool little spot to record in our church mezzanine upstairs, and it was a big hit. That was probably one of the most popular things that we did.
Yeah, I think we ought to bring it back again because it really did well as far as like there was for social media purposes, we shotgunned a lot of things to see what would stick.
Hmm.
Um, that was one that stuck really well, and the other one that did actually really well was Bruce doing the Wednesday night Bible study.
Yeah, that was, and we had different people doing Wednesday night Bible study, but
Yeah.
then Bruce was kind of the consistent one. After a
Hmm.
while, he kind of took it over. But if we're
It was
talking about live
successful.
streaming
Yeah.
on yeah, if we're talking about live streaming on a budget, and if you don't aren't currently live streaming, the best way to get started is you literally can use your phone. If you have an iPhone or a phone with a decent camera, you can set it up on a tripod, Facebook Live or YouTube Live, and you can literally be online. Just
Yeah. I'm not gonna. We talk about this. All of us together talk about this in private a lot about the potential issues going on with Facebook.
mhm.
Um, I want to do a separate podcast just talking about the potential First Amendment issues going on with Facebook right now.
That'd be great.
And if you are going to if you're trying to build an online presence, I feel like right now, just the Paul Harvey's rest of the story of it right now is do it on YouTube. Build your following on YouTube right now because I don't believe Facebook is as stable as from a First Amendment standpoint as it could be. Um, we've dealt with issues in the past on that, and I do want to talk about that in another post. But if you're starting from scratch, you need to find your medium for live streaming and how you're going to point your congregation to it. I think right now, just by and large, go to YouTube, put links on your website, even put links on YouTube like we're doing right now, or YouTube.
On Facebook, yeah.
I'm sorry, on Facebook to YouTube. Talk more about that stuff later, but I think that's the best way to do it. But yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, a phone. iPhones in particular have been very good since the 11. So we're talking
Mhm.
probably 2018. Um,
Yeah.
I use a 14 Pro. I mean, you know, I write it off every year. I get a new phone. I get a new phone
Mhm.
every year, and I have noticed the quality on the iPhones for video has been very good since at least 2018, since the iPhone 11. You can absolutely take an iPhone 11 Pro, especially if you've got the three camera model, um,
Mhm.
and do a good wide angle shot of your stage. I think that's the important thing. If you've only got one camera, and this, we've talked about this decision ad nauseum in the background, is what is the one shot if you've only got one camera? What do you need to get? You need to get the
Right.
whole stage.
Correct.
And then when the pastor comes up and talks, you need somebody who can be back there to zoom in
Mhm.
for a good podium shot.
Right.
So you're really running two shots for the whole service. Um, in the very beginning, when we were doing this, we weren't even doing that. We were just running a static wide angle.
I had the iPad about halfway back in the auditorium on a tripod, and it was just static wide angle, getting the whole stage, all of the musicians on stage. And we didn't even zoom in on the pastor. I think we just had it close enough that you could see him.
No, it was in the summer of 2020 when we first started talking about having somebody back there to
Well,
actively, zoom in.
well, and that's when we ended up upgrading our camera. We went from an iPad and we bought a nice Canon XA11 camera that we have, and we were able to do more zooming in and out and get good quality video from that. And since then, we've upgraded to even better cameras with PTZ optics and whatnot. And so we have multi cameras, and we can talk about that too.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think by and large that Canon you guys moved up to was the single biggest step up that we've
right.
had before the PTZs. And we used that for the rest of 2020 into probably the first part of 2021
Yeah.
before we had okay, so the church had an old PTZ,
We
a
did. It
static,
was in storage that was never
yeah,
used,
it was a
and we
static
were able to pull it out.
PTZ. Yeah, we set that up for like one shot.
Yeah, and it worked fine.
And then in
But we wanted to up
2022,
up our yeah.
yeah.
In
So
2022,
it's
we
yeah,
budgeted for it. So
right. It truly has been something where we started with nothing, but we were able to build up and make the quality consistently better every year.
right,
Um, that's not even getting into
our
audio
biggest
because
issue.
audio is
Right,
another thing
we'll talk.
altogether.
We'll talk about audio in a second. One of our biggest issues that we have right now with cameras is the lighting in our sanctuary, and there's not a whole lot we can do about it. We have bright lights. We dim them, but we're still pulling in light from our projectors. And whatnot. We also have a stained glass window in our baptistry that's pulling in light, and so it's causing some issues with the quality. If we had a lot of churches that don't have a window in their baptistry and are able to make it darker and do more with some overhead lighting, you can get better quality picture. But that's the issue that we're dealing with right now.
And we've tried dimming the lights out in the congregation to try to
Right.
get some sort of balance between it and it really hasn't helped. But that's
Mhm.
like the big issue going forward is how are we going to get the lighting better? That's not even considering how bad the projectors are.
Correct.
Yeah, because we that's
It
another
just
washout problem we have altogether.
at this point it kind of is what it is, and we're just kind of dealing with it.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears now and talk about audio. One of the things, like when you first start, if you're just using an iPhone or using iPad or something like that, I mean, you literally are just using the microphone on that, recording the room, and so you're trying to balance audio with what's in the room, and you want to try to get a good quality. And that's a struggle. I know we started with that, but there's ways that you can get better quality audio. So if you want to run a feed off your soundboard out of one of the auxes into your iPad or iPhone. Use an interface called like iRig, or
Hmm.
there's several other interfaces that would work that are kind of USB, or you can convert them to Lightning that'll plug right into your iPhone or whatever port you have.
Yeah. I kind of think there's kind of a three-stage approach to doing this. The first is using, it's kind of a mixture. It's using the onboard portion of your device, your iPhone, even if you're using Android, USB-C, whatever. Um, then you have, in that same sort of vein, you have extra components you can add on there. Rode makes a video mic. Rode makes a good mic for like 79, $80 that connects via Lightning and via USB-C. That it is pretty good. It's a shotgun style mic, so it's not
Mm,
good for a wide variety of capturing everything.
right.
If I had to have one mic and it was only to capture the sermon, that would be the mic I would use. Um, yeah, it's like $79 called the Rode Video Mic, and
Right.
that's
And
the one that I would absolutely use.
I actually have a miniature version of that called the Video Micro, and this one
Hmm.
has Lightning, and it'll plug right into my phone, and it'll give me a little better quality audio. I don't know if you can see this right here, and it has the dead cat little windscreen thing you can put on it. And we've recorded a few videos with it. We don't use it all the time now because we have better equipment. But when you're just starting out, something small like this, if you're just shooting little devotional videos or announcement videos up close, this is the kind of mic you can use. This is called the Video Mic ME-L, and it's made by Rode.
Yeah, I think that is a very good choice if that is like your first upgradable step, so to speak.
Correct. When we started, we didn't know what we were doing, so we were trying to find all kinds of little gadgets and gizmos that we could up our quality.
Yeah,
and that's kind of where we ended up.
I think that the next step you go from there, and it's more of a semantics thing more than anything, because we talked about different qualities of mics last time, but also you have to consider the types of capsules you can run in conjunction with each other. Do you have your Zoom with you right now on your
My
desk?
Zoom H6.
Yeah.
I do. That's what my microphone is plugged into.
Okay. The
No,
Zoom
I can't.
H6. Yeah, I know you can't really pull it up, but it's got an XY pattern.
Right, and I don't have that microphone on there.
Yeah, you don't have the adapter on there. But Zoom
Correct.
recently,
this is what the H6 looks like.
yeah, Zoom recently put out the capsule and the XY for an iPhone, and it's the same quality, and it's only $100.
Yeah, it plugs right into the port.
It's awesome. I have yeah, as a lawyer, I have been in some depositions before, doing depositions where the deposition company would come in and they brought those. The quality is awesome. Cool.
Well, here's what the XY looks like
$100.
for the Zoom. This is what plugs into my Zoom recorder. Well, they make an iPhone version of this kind of XY capsule, and then it would have a lightning port right here, thing that would plug right into your phone. And you get good quality with two mics.
Yeah, and the big thing with that is if you are aiming, say, at the stage, you would want to be, close to the stage in some way. Now, when we originally started this, we had the iPad all the way back at the back,
right,
almost by the soundboard.
Yep.
The quality was not that great.
No, it was not.
It was pretty bad.
You're picking up a large room with your little microphone, and it causes issues.
And if you're kind of a acoustic audio nerd, and your sanctuary already has acoustic issues, which I would dare say 99% of them do, right. You're only going to make it worse by capturing way, way at the back. You're going to be hearing the most diffused, muddy sound possible.
Yep.
You need to be as close to the source as possible. So that means sometimes you have to make concessions with the video. If this is what you're working with, it's an iPad and something like this, the Zoom, Sennheiser makes one now, Rode, whatever. You're looking at the sub $150 range for an addition to your phone or your iPad. You need to be as close to the source as possible.
Yes.
Just hard stop. That's it. Now, one level up from that, where we were at for the bulk of 2021, was moving over to an interface that we were then able to run into our computer. We moved up to a computer setup at this point.
Right.
Yep. And we were running OBS. OBS is a free software, and I found it out really from my son. My son's an online streamer. And
a lot of gamers use it.
Gamers love OBS because of just how customizable it is. And it truly, you can customize whatever you need. You get, somebody at the church does graphics. We made lower thirds. We can pop in and out lower thirds. We can pop in and out lower thirds for introducing, special guests, whatever we need. The OBS community is a very, very friendly community. If you ever go on their forums, they are very helpful. And they know that a lot of churches now are using sort of the hybrid method we're using. What we initially did is we took an interface. I have, this isn't the exact one we use. This is kind of a step up. This is a UA Volt. And we'll do another video talking about, and podcast talking about So I have $300. What interface do I need to buy?
Right. Yep.
Uh,
We've got that little Roland interface we started with.
yeah. This interface right now, as of 2023, this is the one to buy for $300.
There you go.
The UA Volt, just hard stop,
Good quality.
amazing sounding. Jason knows very well. I've been into boutique audio and high end audio for 20 years now.
Right. We've been
I
recording
have
stuff for a
used
long time.
some crazy stuff over the years. My go-to is still the Apogee Symphony. That is my sound. When I mix and do production stuff, I just use a Symphony. But if I have to take something with me, UA has truly stepped up their game. I've always had a problem with the interfaces for that. And this is the interface I'm thinking of, that what are you going to pull from the board? So you got to open aux that you can route stuff out. What is the interface I want to run into that could run into OBS and give us some good audio that we could sync up with the camera?
Right.
There's two interfaces I can think of. If you're looking under $300, the UA Volt, or looking at the Audient. The Audient, the Evo, the small Evo, which is about $100.
That's great.
I cannot say enough good about that interface, because that is what saved us during 2021 and 2022.
Yep.
Hard stop. That interface was amazing. Yeah, I've got one somewhere around here, but
we've got two or three. Our associate pastor's using one in his office currently, and so
the way we ran this in is we had your Canon camera. We were running HDMI from that into just a little HDMI dongle that plugged into a Mac Mini.
Right.
And so that was our biggest upgrade piece, so to speak, that we bought. It was a Mac Mini, and it was about, I think we paid $600 for it.
It was 600. Yep.
And I upgraded the RAM. Now, mind you, this is one of those that was a pre-M1.
Right. Yep.
Any M1, M2 Mac Minis are not serviceable anymore. This is something good to know if you're looking and thinking about what we're doing. And we're still largely using this setup. We just upgraded since then. But if you are going that route, if you buy an M1 or M2, they are not upgradable. RAM is not upgradable. You are stuck with whatever you buy. So if you go to Best Buy, you are going to be stuck with 8 gigs. And I'm telling you, 8 gigs, if you are going to be processing audio plus video and streaming, is not enough. Mm-hmm. You need 16.
Right.
To be comfortable. We have been there.
Get to 16.
We have had this problem. What this means you're going to have to do is, you cannot just set this up during a week on a whim saying, well, we're going to start doing it this week and go to Best Buy and buy everything we need. It's not going to happen. You're going to have to buy this from Apple online if you're going to get M1. Now, if you still can find an older i5 version, that is what was our workhorse for a year and a half.
Right.
We installed 32 gigs on that bad boy. And I have yet to have a problem with it. It's been awesome. Mm-hmm. So that's what you're going to have to do. If you're not comfortable tearing apart one of these things, putting RAM in, doing all that kind of stuff like that, you're going to have to get M1, and you're going to have to get 16 gigs. Hard stop, M1, 16 gigs. That's what you need. Once you get that set up, OBS is totally free. Entirely free. And you're going to set up really two things. You're going to set up an audio input source, and you're going to set up a video input source. Your video input source is going to come off of whatever camera you got, and you're going to run that in through HDMI, through like a USB-C connector. Run that in, and then your audio is going to come off the board. You're going to find an open auxiliary channel where you can route everything and then mix everything to where it sounds pretty good, and then route it out of that into something like this. You're going to go into an interface of some type, and then you're going to use the interface as your audio input source. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow you to get very high quality audio coming in and also good quality video coming in straight off your board. But remember, this is static. So whatever you set on that board is what it's going to do. And at the time we were largely doing this, I was working out in Abilene at the time.
Mhm.
And it was hard for me to get out there to you guys. And so we kind of told this story before. What happened when our board blew up?
Yes.
We ended up moving to a proper digital board that I could remote into. And
Yeah, we've since upgraded our audio as well.
yeah. So what happened when we upgraded that board is we went from using a straight aux method to more of a hybrid method like you would see true live shows running. We are running USB-C off of our board. That's New Studio Live board. And we are running into bypassing an interface all the way completely. And we
Right.
are just using the board as an interface to run in. And I am live mixing plugins on Logic Pro during the service.
And he's doing this remotely. He's not even in the house with us. He's from his
I'm in
house.
I'm in Fort Worth,
Fort Worth,
and
Texas.
I'm doing this, and I've gotten the latency low enough to where I can listen back and I can know I am about 3/4 of a second off. That's pretty good. But
Right.
my ear has trained to the point to where I know I'm off. I know what I need to do to adjust. And we really started this at the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
In earnest. We were experimenting with this last fall, but I really feel like it kind of came into its own and became a good package at this point. So when you go the Mac Mini route, OBS options open up for you greatly.
Mhm.
And one of the bigger issues we were having on the video side that we solved using a program called ProPresenter. I think a lot of churches out there are using ProPresenter.
It's pretty much the standard now. There's
It's a
other
standard.
programs like Media Shout and Easy Worship and some of those other ones.
So what were you using before? Media Shout?
We were using Easy Worship actually when I first
Easy
came.
Worship.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
we upgraded to
So
and ProPresenter was originally only on Mac. But they've since upgraded to Windows as well.
it's
And I
on
will say
both
this:
now.
we're talking about stuff that we use on a Mac computer. You can use the same similar kind of setup on a Windows PC computer. You just Logic Pro is actually a Mac program, but there's other software that you can use to record with as well.
To do the
Steinberg
same
makes
thing.
great software. Pro Tools.
Mhm.
Some of those other ones.
My favorite
Ableton.
cost effective. Yeah, Ableton Live. That is where we are going. The next stage in our evolution where we're going with this is we are going to go to an Ableton setup because I want to start introducing, and we talked about this yesterday, spent a little time talking about this yesterday, is doing auto tune to help our background vocalists.
Right.
And we're going to have to key that with MIDI. And as far as programs go out there, there is no better program than Ableton on keying MIDI. If you look at any live rigs running today, almost every one of them for a show, if they're queuing music, queuing sound effects, queuing whatever, they're all running Ableton. Ableton is solid.
You can literally run everything at Ableton, from lighting to lyrics to music, anything MIDI with your keyboards. All things can be triggered from MIDI to program and control. Basically, you don't even have to have anybody back there running lyrics because you're got it synced up with the song, and when they trigger that in the MIDI, everything just syncs right up. Especially if you're running tracks. A lot of churches have gone to running tracks on all of their songs, backing tracks, multi-tracks, and this what they call stems. And so all that's run through Ableton, and you're able to sync MIDI up to that and control it.
I really think, you know, just kind of brainstorming kind of where we're at right now, the next solid step to moving towards that is going to be running tracks on every song.
Right.
to get all the musicians accustomed to playing with a track.
Even if
Bec-
it's just with a click track on every song, not
yeah,
necessarily full blown stems from recording. Even
yeah,
if they're just
it's got to
playing
be
with a click.
something to get them accustomed to it, because if you're going to incorporate MIDI, if you're going to incorporate all these things, and you want to go that next step we're at, we
Right.
have to be able to get everybody to play in tempo together, and you have to be able to make these program switches at logical times. It can't just
Right.
be hanging for whatever. It's going to be set to a grid. So that's what I think is important, is sort of a next step there. Now, with that being said, can you go ahead and do sort of a hybrid approach to that? That is what precisely where we're talking about doing right now, is say, okay, we want to institute auto tune right now. So what we're thinking of doing, and I know you're looking into it, is a wireless MIDI controller you could use in
Hmm.
stage,
Correct.
that we could just page through different preset changes on Logic for auto tune
Right.
that would affect the background vocalist only, to try to tighten up that sound a little bit. And we could take those, and you just page through as you're starting every song. All you've got to do is hit a button, and it's going to trigger on Logic to say, okay, well, this past song we were just in, we were in the key of G. Now we're moving to E flat. Because auto tune is sensitive to the key you're in.
Right.
It's very sensitive, and it's one of those things that would have to be programmed and keyed, because there's no other way to do it unless you've got somebody physically back there that really knows what they're doing that. Now, and I've thought about this, and the reason why I think you would have to go to something like that, at least in our situation, is the times I'm here in Fort Worth, there's too much of a latency.
Right.
It's something you would have to hit there. I could watch the changes, make sure it's happening the way it needs to. But if I did it from my side, there would be about a couple second latency starting it, and then there'd be problems that way. So I think it's just better just to have something physical there, and you can just page through. But the ultimate goal is to go to something like Ableton, where the whole thing is just, my job every week is pre-programming an Ableton project
Right.
that carries everything through the entire service. And all you would be doing is starting and stopping the tracks, which all the accompanying MIDI for everything, even lights, we get to the point where lights are that way.
Right.
Everything is just done by a page forward, and that Bluetooth switch you would use for MIDI is just a page forward for each program.
Hmm.
Because it gives you control over starting and stopping it. Because if you just let the machine run, it's just going to run.
Right.
And that gives you the control there. So that's the extent of what I think you could do with a good setup like the core that we have. And when I say the core setup, we're running a Mac Mini, but you can use a Windows computer. We're running OBS, and we're running off of a digital board, bringing everything in. Now, camera wise, you want to talk a little bit about the ATEMs that we're using?
Yeah. So ATEM is basically a camera switcher. We're running multiple cameras, and so that's we have somebody back in our broadcast booth that's literally switching between cameras, different shots that we have from the PTZ cameras. We have like a stagnant center shot, and then we have some side shots that are coming in. And so as sometimes they'll zoom in on certain musicians, or if I'm leading from the piano, they'll zoom in on me if I'm talking. And so they're back there with the ATEM switching between those cameras, and that broadcast through OBS. You can also
Yeah.
run
So
audio through that as well if you want to.
yeah, we've never ran audio. We've always done audio separately,
Correct.
just because of we've had digital boards, and we've had the ability to do that. But could you run a microphone off of ATM? It's an interface. It technically is an interface the same way
Technically.
the rest of these others are. So yeah, you could.
Right.
That's absolutely something you could do. Could you run? We never did it because I'd already invested in the Evos, the Audient Evos. But could you technically run a stem in off of an aux off your board? You could. So you technically could use an ATEM as an all-in-one initially to get started. And
Right.
can you remind me the price of the ATEMs? I cannot remember off the top of my
I
head.
think it was we have the 810 Mini, and then we have the 810 Mini Pro, and I think one was like $300. I don't remember the exact price on all of those.
Yeah, I'm pulling up on Sweetwater right now.
Okay.
That's my de facto. I go to Sweetwater for
The,
everything.
the 810 Mini Pro is $495. The 810 Mini is $295, and that's
Yeah,
made
that's
by
right.
Blackmagic.
Yep, Black Magic Design.
We
I,
started with the 810 Mini, and it was very. I mean, it worked great. It was very limiting in what we could do, and we wanted to be able to put everything up on a TV where we could see all the multi cameras. And so we had to upgrade to the Pro, which allowed us to have a grid on the TV where we could see all the different cameras that we're switching between.
and the reason that's so important is setting up a shot.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have a TV when you're running multiple cameras. You want to have a TV to where you could set up and really stage your shot, and then when you
Right.
switch to that camera, you're not having to go, oh, I got to reset it real quick and make it look good. It looks
Let me
professional
talk about
broadcast doing that.
right. Let me talk about the PTZ cameras in a second. PTZ
Yeah,
stands for pan, tilt, and zoom. And so these cameras move up and down and around, and they zoom in, and they're controlled by a joystick. So we literally have somebody in the back controlling the joystick, switching between the cameras. And so they'll line up the shot on the TV before we send it to OBS with the ATEM. And so they're lining up their next shot, zooming in exactly where they want it. And then when they're ready to switch, then they'll switch it.
yeah, exactly. And we're running three right now. We have one static that does not move,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have two
And
that we can move
right.
however we need them.
And PTZ is a generic term for these cameras. We're actually using the brand that we're using is PTZ Optics, and the model that we're running is a little over $2,000 per camera, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're doing.
Yeah, but that's not to say that's where we started, because we certainly didn't. We started with the iPad.
Right.
Um,
And we're
this
still
is planning.
barely exactly, and we're still barely scratching the surface of what we can do. Larger churches are even higher quality, more tens of thousands of dollars with their setup.
Most of them are running
Kind of
4K
basic,
now. The big churches are running
right?
4K. They're
Yeah,
running dedicated boards. We're running just straight off of software. As far as our mixing goes, audio mixing, we're mixing on Logic Live,
mm-hmm.
and it
It
works
works,
just fine.
and the quality is good.
I'm proud of the quality. I'm proud of what we've been able to do over
Mm-hmm.
the past 3 years doing this, because where we started was a far sight from where we're at now. But
Right.
I mean, we were budget sensitive, and I think a lot of churches, and this kind of sidetrack into the economics of all this. I think a lot of churches were going, "What in the world's going to happen when the pandemic hit?"
Mm-hmm.
We did not start by investing a ton of money in this because we were like everybody else, thinking, "What in the world's going to happen?"
Yeah, we literally shut down, and we weren't having services in house, so we had to figure it out real quick. So you're right. We
Yeah,
didn't invest a whole lot to start out with, but once we realized we needed better quality, we started up in our game a little bit.
yeah, and it's been slow and methodical.
It has,
We,
and we're still
we
not where we want to be. We still got plans for future expansion with our system and our setup. Like he said, we're going to move to Ableton eventually and be able to run auto
yeah,
tune and some of the other things. And we'd eventually like to add more cameras and different things that we can do to make it even better.
I would,
So
you know, uh, I'm a big believer in these little cameras too, the GoPros.
yeah, GoPros they're great little cameras, and you can even do. I mean, if you want to set up a drum cam on your stage, you can literally set up this overhead of your drums, and if that's one of your
Yeah,
shots you want to put into OBS through your ATEM, you can run this HDMI out, and they actually make a wireless HDMI that you can send
yep.
back to your board, and just more shots.
That's something I've been considering a lot, and if that's something you're considering too out there listening, one thing you've got to take into consideration on wireless HDMI is it's not really a what I would call a stable standard. It's not stable like USB or anything of that nature. It's not stable like Bluetooth. It's a wide bandwidth standard, and your network has to be able to support it.
Exactly.
That's the thing that has kept me from recommending it for us yet, is because the networking hardware that we have in the sanctuary, I don't think is up to snuff for what we need for wireless to consistently do it.
Yeah.
You need a consistent connection, and I think the networking side would have to be upgraded before we get there, because honestly, we haven't talked about it in this whole conversation, but one of the biggest struggles we had in 2021 into 2022, and I remember because I documented all this. Like I said, I'm OCD. I'm a lawyer historian. I document everything, and we had a lot of problems with streaming quality.
Right.
I don't know if you remember that, where we'd have cutouts, we'd have
Yep.
all sorts of problems. And you would think this goes without saying, but I didn't realize it until I had to go through like a 10-point kind of assessment of where in the chain are we having a problem.
Hmm.
Our OBS computer that was streaming live was running off of Wi-Fi. Don't do it. It doesn't work. And we spent needless weeks trying to figure that out, thinking, surely the Wi-Fi is not the problem. We're only pushing 2.5 megabits down. We're not pushing
Right.
enough, but it was.
Yeah. We end up
As
having to
soon as we
hardwire the
hardwired,
computer. Yep.
you need to hardwire the computer live streaming. Just full stop. You need to hardwire.
Well, there's too many people on your Wi-Fi network in church that are using it for their, check their email or use the Bible app or whatever, and it's causing issues.
And one last thing about the networking side, and it's something I had to get on our routers and do, was prioritize traffic for streaming.
Hmm.
I had to go on our router, and if you got a network guy in the church, this is something they need to know, and they'll know how to do, is you get on your router and you say, okay, our streaming computer is whatever this IP address is. All the traffic coming from that computer, prioritize it over everybody else.
Right.
Because Sunday's going to be the day when everybody's there using the Wi-Fi, and you want to make sure somebody checking their Facebook isn't prioritized over the actual live stream.
Right. Yep.
And that's a network kind of quality of service thing. But when we made those changes, I believe it was in the fall of 2021 into 2022, we really upped our game, because
Made a big difference.
we were only streaming at 720p.
Right.
Up until then. When I finally made those changes to the router, and our biggest problem is where we had the computers, we couldn't find a good way to hardwire.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that was the worst part. It wasn't getting all the routers and adjusting anything. It was, we just had to get a 100-foot cable where we had set up, and that's just the only way it worked. But once we did that, we have been streaming at a very, very steady 1080, high quality, the best we can push right now. And I'm very happy with our quality we're pushing right now. We have came so far from where we started with one iPad.
Yep.
And, for everybody out there going, oh my gosh, this is a lot of information being thrown at us. You have to take this step by step.
Right.
This is not something that you just institute in a week. And even me, when I was at my most optimistic, oh man, we can kill this thing. We're going to get this going real quick.
Yeah,
I don't know how
pretty
many sleep.
ambitious there.
I know. I had a lot of sleepless nights where I was figuring out, how in the world am I going to make this work?
Exactly.
I know conceptually how to do it, but we got the money situation, and now we have the no one thinks of the logistics. Until you look at your room and say, what am I actually working with? So step one, if you're looking to up your game, or you're just starting streaming altogether, look at your room. Where are you going to set stuff up? Where do you have a connection to the internet, a stable connection to the internet? Because that is a hard stop. You've got to have it. You cannot rely on Wi-Fi. If you want a consistent connection, it's not going to happen. Everything else,
That said,
plan
yeah,
and just go from
right.
there.
Yep, exactly. We're about out of time. If you have more questions about live streaming, sound systems, any of that kind of stuff, shoot us an email at churchtechprobs@gmail.com. We'll be happy to help you as best we can. And anything else you want to say about that? It's email set up. We're
Yep.
ready to go.
Yeah, we're good to go. We're popping up on YouTube finally. We got through all the aggregators, and we'll be should be on Apple, Spotify, Google, even Amazon.
Yeah.
If you're into
Check us
Amazon,
out. Like and like and subscribe so you can get these each and every week. We put these out. And just a cheap plug, this podcast is mixed and edited by Paradigm Media Productions. And we look forward to next week. I'm not sure what the topic will be, but we'll be putting that out real soon. And we hope that you'll continue to join us. Check out our previous podcasts if you haven't listened to them or seen them on YouTube. We've done a couple of other things talking about sound systems and microphones, and so those were great as well. Go check those out if you've missed those. And we look forward to next week. Thanks for joining us.
Have a great week.